Today we're going to be looking at the McFarlane Toys, The Walking Dead Color Tops number 38. This is Savior Prisoner Daryl. Let's go ahead and find out how tall Savior Prisoner Daryl is. The figure is just a little over 7 inches. To be exact, about 7¼ inches in height. Like with the other color tops, Daryl gets himself a display stand featuring only AMC, The Walking Dead on the front. Nothing nice actually if they would have put the name of the character on the front, but at the very least, it means you can swap out these stands with other figures. You don't necessarily always have to have it specifically with Daryl, but they are carbon copies to one another, I suppose, for the sense, except for the fact that there's 2 peg holes on the top. Ezekiel, that we just recently looked at, only had 1 peg. And to be fair, he actually only had 1 peg hole on the underside of his foot. I don't know why. Again, we can't get consistency across the entire line. It makes no effort at all. I mean, if they already have the mold for a double-pegged stand, why they can't simply have released that with Ezekiel, for example, and for that matter, it doesn't take much effort to put a secondary hole in his foot. Consistency. Anyways, we'll put that to the side. He also comes with his mop. The mop generally is pretty clean on the handle portion. It's actually rather pristine clean there, with a little bit of brownish red on the end. I have a little bit of paint scraping, which I think could have been the culprit of sliding the actual broom into the mop into his hand. It might have scraped off some of the paint in the process. I guess to some extent, it's not a deal breaker because, well, these are old. Everything's basically supposed to be old in the show. I guess you could have a little bit of paint or whatever scraping off the mop. As for the mop head, it's slightly bent and looks extremely dirty. Whatever cleaning of the floor you're expecting to accomplish here, you're using a rather dirty looking mop, and hopefully you're not using dirty water as well. The mop can fit into his hand. I suppose it actually can fit in either one of his hands, but this hand here is a little bit more closed-fisted, so it's better for him holding it in this hand. And you can either have it more slightly levitating off the surface, wherever you've got it displayed, or you can have it draping and having it slightly, sitting on the floor, sitting on the bottom there. Then you can go ahead and take the figure, like going back, he's got 2 peg holes on the undersides of his feet. Just line up everything on the stand. There we go. And drape the mop very nicely onto the base. Adds a little extra oomph to it. For an otherwise not slightly boring figure, but it does add a little extra oomph to it. So having a look at Prisoner, to be exact, Savior Prisoner Daryl. Not a bad looking figure. I have more problems with the paint than I do with the sculpt. Unlike Ezekiel, who I thought looked nothing like the character, I think this very much looks like Daryl. Nice moppy looking hair. It's almost similar actually to the mop. His stubble is questionable, but it's about in the same vein as what we normally would expect from the McFarlane lineup. Stubble is kind of more like little dots than it is. I guess that's the best way to go, because if they had just kind of given a light paint across, it would look closer to being a beard. The head sculpt though was good. I like the little wrinkles and stuff underneath his eyes. His eyes also have some additional coloring in there, some blues and blacks, a little bit of reflection there as well. So that comes together rather nicely. Doesn't have much in the way of additional paint to his hair, keeping it relatively more to the darker brown. But I think otherwise it looks pretty good. Then you get to the outfit, and I like the outfit and I don't like the outfit. I like the shirt, which features the big A written across the top area here. And if I kind of bring this close to the camera, you can see that they've kind of put almost like a wet wash of a darker brown on top of it. I like these little elements here, because it's subtle, but it still conveys the look of dirt. Even up here, I don't mind it as much either. It's really when you get to the big, splotchy paint, specifically on his pants, that I find it all kind of comes unraveling from itself. It looks as if somebody has just gone in and customized this themselves, and ultimately just splotched a whole bunch of paint on it. I get that his pants are supposed to look dirty, but I think if it looked closer to like this sort of dirt, I think it would look a little bit better. It's almost a little too much. Daryl, though, is absolutely filthy. He's got dirt all over his arms, all over his back. Everywhere there could be articles of clothing, or really for that matter, his skin is covered in dirt. It's not really it's one consistent color of dirt. It's just like this kind of black, just like wet paint that they just kind of wet washed over top of everything. Some gradients and different variations of color would have gone a long way. Instead of just simply taking a paintbrush, it's like you're literally just dipping it in wet, almost watercolor paint, and just wet washing everything from head to toe. Moderation is key. Again, I like this little part area here. I find down here gets a little bit too much. They could have pulled it back just a little bit. Luckily, Daryl does stand, so I don't have any issues with him standing. I say that and now he falls over, but doesn't have any sort of real problems falling over on me. He's quite the contrast from the Ezekiel that we just finished having a look at. Go ahead and get Daryl onto his stand. We'll slide him back here for a second. Bring the camera back. And let's bring in Ezekiel, who we've also recently had a look at. Ezekiel's got some nice color combinations here, but I think Daryl is an otherwise better looking figure. I can't help but think, though, I don't know if I would say we would need Savior Prisoner Daryl. I mean, we already have a Daryl, and a couple of other variations to maybe outside wearing clothes Daryl would have been going a long way. I don't know if I would necessarily say we needed a Savior Prisoner Daryl. That's just my opinion. We'll move Ezekiel out of the way for a full review of him. You know where to find it. It's right here. Well, not right here, but the video just before that. Quickly having a look at his shoes. His shoes are two different pairs of shoes. Looks like two different types of shoes, or two different types of laces at the very least. Those aren't too bad, but just way too much black paint that's been added to the lower half of him here. Let's run through his posability. His head rotates all the way around. His arms are on ratcheted universal joints, so they hinge outward. You can also rotate them around. He has ratcheted joints in the elbow, which even makes more visible. I mean, the ratcheted joint you can see much more so because they've added on so much of the additional black paint. It's actually even gotten into the little areas of the ratchets, so you can even see them a little bit more than you normally would. His arms also rotate, his hands rotate. Doesn't have any sort of waist articulation. By the way, this is a hard plastic. If you thought this was softer plastic, you would be absolutely incorrect. The legs split outward on Daryl, forward and back. He's got a bend at the knee. You can rotate the lower leg, and you can also rotate the feet ever so slightly. I'm of torn opinions here when it comes to Daryl. I do think the figure looks good. The head sculpt is decent enough, but I don't really think we necessarily needed this specific Daryl. The complaints I had with Ezekiel, I can't say the same here for Daryl. Daryl actually has a good looking head sculpt. Ezekiel didn't look anything like Ezekiel from the show. It's not to say, though, that this figure isn't without its flaws, but its flaws are relatively on a low side. If the face sculpt looked nothing like the character, I pretty much would write off the majority of this figure, but the head sculpt's good, so that's a good starting point. If we look at really the rest of the figure, I feel, if anything, the paint was a little too crazy. Probably should have toned it back a little bit, that he didn't have as much of the dark paint that he has all over his pants. His shirt's not as bad, but I think the pants get a little too crazy, a little bit too crazy for my liking. The inclusion of the mop is a nice touch, but at the end of the day, do we really need another Daryl? Some say yes, some say no. Some say it's pretty cool that we get ourselves a Savior Prisoner Daryl. I say I might be just content with a regular Daryl. I mean, he's had a couple of different looks outside the Savior's compound. I don't know if I would necessarily say he was warranting having this particular figure made. That being said, mileage may vary and you guys may feel completely different. I have to give credit though, at the very least, the sculpt looks like Daryl. Whether you think he needs this specific outfit in a plastic figure, let me know down below. Today we were having a look at the McFarlane toys. This was the Walking Dead Color Tops number 38, and this was Savior Prisoner Daryl. And we were on Easy Street. I was going to say it at some point during this review, but I wasn't going to do that because that would get stuck, lodged inside your brain. Anybody who doesn't watch The Walking Dead is probably like, I have absolutely no idea what he's talking about. More videos coming your way, guys. Make sure you hit that little subscribe button down below. And like I said, more videos are coming your way. If you guys want to go, by the way, head back and have a look at all the Walking Dead figure reviews that I've done. There's a playlist on this channel you can check out and watch at your viewing pleasure. That's right, your viewing pleasure. Somebody cut me off. I was saying the exact same thing. He's going to say viewing pleasure. Viewing pleasure. More videos to come, guys. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.